Welcome everyone to Camille's Harem, not just a podcast for novice writers by novice writers, but also a YouTube channel by novice writers for novice writers. Because writing is an adventure, it's more fun with friends, and on this glorious month of Halloween, we love to talk about how to do spooky storytelling. And in this particular video, I want to talk about how you can use Dungeons & Dragons to help you with your horror storytelling. Yes, I absolutely mean that. Now, once again, one of the reasons why I love to use Dungeons & Dragons as a tool to help you better your writing is because it is a shared storytelling experience. Whether you are the Dungeon Master or one of the players, it is an excellent opportunity for you to get in-the-moment feedback on how you are helping to tell your part of the story. So it doesn't matter if you're the Dungeon Master or the player, you are contributing. And based on how you can contribute to what's happening there at the table, you can tell if this is something that is going to jive well, whether it be a character, an arc, an item that you use, a certain storytelling style, whatever it be. You can learn a lot based on what you do in the moment with Dungeons & Dragons. Horror storytelling is very much the same, and one of the reasons why I do believe that you can do a lot with Dungeons & Dragons is because, once again, you can get immediate feedback from the players, especially if you are the Dungeon Master and you're trying to come up with a scary story. In this particular sense, what you want to look out for is you want to look out for how do people react? Are they enthralled with your story? Are they bored? You don't have to worry so much about do they get goosebumps when they check over their shoulders to see if some monster's about to come out after them. I mean, that's kind of the peak of horror storytelling right there. But what you want to keep an eye out for is, are they engaged? Do they get lost in the mystery? Because horror is a lot of mystery. You want to keep people guessing about what the monster is, what the curse is, whatever's going on right there. Because with a good horror story, as you will learn, especially the more horror stories that you tell, if you just throw it right on out there, here's the monster, here's the curse, here's the witch, here's the murderer, whatever, if you come out clean from the very get-go, it's very, very hard to maintain a long sense of dread. Now, you might be able to get away with that with a much shorter story, but if you're looking to write a longer story, such as a novella or a novel, you can't just introduce your monster, your mystery, your murderer, your curse, whatever. Woo-wee! You know what? I'm actually going to keep that in because right now as I'm recording, it is a spooky October night. The wind is howling outside, and I'm honestly getting goosebumps talking about horror storytelling because, yeah, the atmosphere is absolutely perfect. So I'm keeping that in. In any case, so yeah, my door just suddenly opened up as a gust of wind rushed throughout my house. Woo! Oh, that's cool stuff. So, in any case, you do not want to just introduce your monster right off the bat, coming right back to it right there. Instead, what you will learn is you will learn that you want to prolong the suspense. You want to leave clues. You want to build up the terror. And one of the best ways that you can do that, one of the best ways you can practice this, I should say, is once again through Dungeons & Dragons. And I'm going to walk you through how you can do this. Now, there are plenty of different stories that you can tell, so I would say don't take this as the one and only formula that you can use. Instead, use this as kind of inspiration. But when you get together your players, as you're introducing the game to them, before they even start making their characters, pitch the idea that you have. Tell them, I want to do a horror story with you guys. I'm thinking it's going to last like so many sessions, yada, yada, yada. This is going to be the setting. These are the kind of characters you're going to want to think of having, because you're either solving some sort of mystery or going to be going up against some sort of crazy monster, whatever. You give them an idea of what they're in for, so that way, okay, they're buying into it. You then know that you get the right kind of people for a horror story. Not everyone is into horror, and so some people might excuse themselves, and that's totally fine, because once again, you want to make sure that you have the right audience and the right players for the story that you want to tell. Then, once everyone has put together their characters and you put them into the story, you want to ease them into what is going on. You don't want to just throw them right into the middle of it and just be like, you wake up and you find yourselves in a barn that has been ransacked by a werewolf. Well, that might make actually a really good action story, but it doesn't do much for the horror elements. One of the things that you will learn as you delve more into horror is that you want to establish what is quote-unquote normal. You want to let your players have time to establish their characters, establish relationships, and come to understand the world that they are in. Whether this be a town plagued by vampires and werewolves, whether it is that they're going to a mansion that is plagued by a curse, whatever it is. You want them to have time to get familiar with this place. So that way, when you start pulling all of the little tricks and hijinks to heighten the tension, it goes against what is normal. Now, one of the things that you want to pay attention to as the Dungeon Master is the amount of detail that you use. You want to establish, like I said, you want to establish the normal, you want to establish the setting, you want to establish the characters that are being dealt with. But you also want to pay attention to the amount of detail that you put into the horrific things that are happening around the characters. So let's say, for example, your group goes to break some curse at a mansion. They've been hired, they know that they're going into this mansion to break some curse that has been plaguing this half-elven family. Well, as they are going throughout the manor, you can start describing things such as how one of the wings, which is very beautifully decorated with rich rugs and ornate chandeliers, there is noticeable amounts of dust as you walk across the floor, little poofs of dust bunnies. The furniture has a nice layer of dust. There are cobwebs up above, whereas the rest of the mansion is quite lavish, quite clean, quite cheery. Other than the fact that there's a curse going on, it's clear that people have been avoiding this part of the hall, or this part of the mansion. And as you walk, you feel a prickling at the back of your neck. The hairs stand up on end. There's a slight chill. You can't tell from where the chill is coming from, but you feel that something is here. From that point, you then let the characters interact with what is happening. As they start making decisions and they start reaping the consequences of those decisions, you want to make sure that you are adequately describing what is going on. You don't want to use too much detail. It is absolutely possible to go into way too much detail and slow down the pace of the story. But you also want to make sure that you're giving enough detail to fully immerse your players in the setting. This is a skill that totally translates over to writing, because when you are painting a picture in someone's head, remember, this isn't a movie or a show. You don't have the benefit of laying out the entire set before your audience. Instead, you have to drag them into this world, entice them to come in with neat descriptions. And that is something that, again, you can practice by being the Dungeon Master for a horror game. So, now that you've had your hook that you introduced your players to, you've given them a chance to establish the norm, and now you're using incredible detail to help set the entire setting, to also describe the different events that begin the horror story, whether it be going into the creepy cave, the weird feeling in the hallway, or the smell of wet dog outside, or the feeling that someone is watching them. Whatever it be, you've now established those details. And here's the thing, and this is so hard, it's so tempting to just once again throw the monster right at them. You're going to learn about pacing. This is one of the great things that you can do in Dungeons & Dragons. You can control the pacing by controlling the kinds of encounters that the players have. Now again, you need to respect players' decisions. That is something that as a dungeon master you should always do. You don't want to railroad someone. Even if you have the perfect story, you'll want to let the characters, you want to let the players have their autonomy. But even then, if you know what you have set up, if you've set up the story just right, it should be that unless they all just decide to sit down and let drool come out of the corner of their mouths, they're going to do something that's going to initiate a sequence of events that will lead to the very first horror encounter. And what you want to do is you want to have it start off small and build it up and build it up and build it up. Have these spikes of action, of horror, of intrigue, and then you go into a lull. And then have another spike, another lull, another spike, another lull, and each spike slowly ratchets up the tension until you are ready to unveil your monster. This is how you keep the tension high. This is how you pull people into your horror story. And if you are doing the right job with giving them just enough detail to really paint the picture of this world and what's going on, you will have successfully reeled in your players and they will have an enjoyable time. Getting them scared is a matter of both who you're playing with and your own level of storytelling. So I cannot guarantee that you will frighten your players if you use this formula, but it's a great formula to get you started with how you can think about what you want to do. So I highly encourage you to use Dungeons & Dragons as a way to test out your horror stories. See again how your players interact with the story, how they react to it. Are they engaged? Are they frightened? Are they bored? Are they indifferent? And based off of their feedback, you have a better idea of what you are doing right and what you're doing wrong. And you can then start to apply that to your story. Remember again that you want to be able to balance the amount of detail so that way you can fully flesh out this world. You don't want too much, but if you do too little, it's hard to get the audience engaged in the horror story, especially when you want to start ratcheting up the tension, which you should do in a sequence of spikes and lulls, spikes and lulls, spikes and lulls. This isn't a Dan Brown novel. If you put the pedal to the metal, it won't work. Like, go and watch some good old horror movies. Even those where it seems like the cast is in constant danger, and you know that they are because of the threats that they're up against, there are spikes and lulls, spikes and lulls. Moments where the alien pops out, moments where the alien is gone, moments where the vampire strikes, moments when the vampire is gone, moments where the ghosts are there and throwing things around, and moments where the characters are talking about what they should do about said ghosts. These are your spikes and your lulls that you should be thinking about. And finally, do not reveal your monster or your curse or your murderer before it is time. Because if you do it too soon, you have to work harder and harder to keep the level of dread up. So that is my basic advice for horror storytelling, and also for how you can try to do your own horror story in a game of Dungeons & Dragons. If you have done your own horror story before and you'd like to share it, please write it down in the comments. We'd love to see it. Otherwise, if you're looking for more great writing advice, please go check out our podcast, Camille's Harem, found on Podbean, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, the works. We also have writing exercises for you over at our Pinterest page. We'd love for you to go check it out. We'd also love you to join our community over at our subreddit and at our Discord channel. Links for all of those sites are in the description, and based on when I'm releasing this video, we will have a very special live stream this Friday where we are going to do a choose your own horror adventure story. This is going to be something that you do not want to miss out on, because we are going to have it where everyone who is watching can participate in this journey where you are going to try to solve a 12-year-old murder that was never solved, but now 12 years later, things are getting crazy, things are getting spooky, and we want to make sure that we save the last people who survived this crazy night. So, if you wish to join us for this amazing story, then please show up 7 o'clock Arizona time at Camille's Harem, and you can join in on this adventure. Thank you so much for joining us on this adventure that we call writing, and until the next video, y'all, tschüss.